Do you ever stop and think about how much quilt fabric there is out there online, in stores, in quilters' sewing rooms? There is so much quilting fabric. How can we even begin to get it all quilted? Well, that's my challenge, and I'm just ready and raring to go with making quilts and coming up with as many as I can. And I have this beautiful Fat Quarter bundle I've been waiting to get started on, and I hadn't quite decided what I wanted to do. Because there's over 24 fat quarters in there, so I need a pattern, a block pattern, that'll give me an opportunity to use a lot of different fabrics in one block. Well, here comes the tried and true Log Cabin Block. That is one of the best blocks to use, lots of fabrics. It's very well known for being used as a scrap quilt as well. Now, this is a block that goes back well over a century, maybe a century and a half. Don't quote me, I'm not sure, but it has been around forever, and so many variations. You may have seen my log cabin variation some months ago, the new quilt that I created called Garden Path. I love it, and it's such fun, but this is a more traditional log cabin pattern. There are still a few little quirks in here, a few little modern touches I wanted to add, and I love how this turned out. I'm Louise from Inspired Quilting by Louise, and if you take a look at those blocks hanging behind me, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is digital fabric too, so there's a lot of new things going on here, and this is a lot of fun. I can't wait to show you. So today we're talking about the blocks, and there are some different modifications and variations you can make that's going to change your log cabin block to be exactly a representation of what you want. And then in the next video, we're going to put it together in a quilt, because that in itself is a whole design decision. There are so many options. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started. I want to show you some quilting tips about log cabin blocks. The easy way for me and the way I want to show you how to do this and do some fast strip quilting. That's the way I love it. And I say strip quilting I guess what I mean is chain piecing. I like putting my strips together and chain piece it all together, and it just goes together so much quickly. So let's go ahead. I want to show this to you. But please don't forget, subscribe and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the other side and showing you everything we can about log cabin quilt blocks. It's a pleasure having you here today. Thanks so much. I love starting out with a brand new bundle of fat quarters. You may have seen this a while back. I showed you when I purchased these. These are QT fabrics, and they are digital fabrics, which I hadn't used before, but I really love these prints and I couldn't pass them up. And you can see why. Look at all these beautiful colors. I just think that they're so, so pretty. And the mix of colors, the boldness of them, the contrast, plus there's some nice white background, actually creamy backgrounds for offsets. There's some greens, there's some pink. So it's everything that I like, a good mix of colors, balance between everything. Lights, darks, we're good. I'm excited to make a quilt with this. Now there's 26 fat quarters, so that's a lot of fabric. And I want to be able to use a bit of everything in here. And what I've decided to do is make a log cabin, because a log cabin is great with the narrow strips. You can use a lot of different fabrics that will play off each other, and you can do a contrast within the block. And in this case, I think I'm going to go light and dark. If there were a secondary color that was particularly dominant, other than the blues, I might have gone with a blue on one side, a second color on the other, but there's really not enough of anything. But what I can do is use the green and emphasize the green in a few of the blocks. And there's kind of a few pinks in here. I might be able to do the same thing. So not every block is going to be blue, 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 and it's just a boring blue. Obviously with these fabrics, it's not going to be boring, but I do like to create some color interest as well. So I came up with an idea for a log cabin block here. And what I'm looking at doing is using a 2-inch width. I'll cut it at 2.5, so my center square will be 2 inches. And I'm going to divide, one will be dark, one will be light. So all these lighter blocks are going to finish at 2 inches. They'll be cut at 2.5. These I wanted to put some in at 1.5 inch that they finish. The reason being is that'll create a little more interest in here. If there's a particular color I want to be maybe more subdued, then I can go ahead and do it that way, or maybe a really dark and I don't want it to be particularly wide. I'm not quite sure because I haven't decided just how I'm going to divvy these up, but this is where I'm started. So let me go ahead and pull these fabrics apart. I want to group them by color and then I'll show you where we're going from there. I broke down the bundle into color groups and this is where I ended up. So there's purple, there's dark blue, we have some light blue, some turquoise, green, and then a creamy background, what I would call low volume in this case, and this will be acting as the background fabric. Now the block that I'm looking at is it'll finish I think at about 13 inches, and the light and the dark side will each have, let me think, there'll be the center and then the light and dark will each have 6. So that's 12 and 12 is 13, right? We'll have 6. So I'll have 6 of whatever my dominant color is and 6 of my lighter colors. And fortunately, I have 6 different fabrics. So what I need to be careful of is making sure I don't put everything in the same order. I'll cut some wide, some narrow. And what I'm going to do first here is cut everything into strips. So I will have wide and narrow of everything. And I'm going to figure out kind of sort of how many strips I'm going to need, but I don't even know what size quilt I'm going to make. So if this is 13 inches, it finishes at 13, then we've got 26 is 52. So if we do a 16 block quilt 4x4, that's 52 inches square, and add another 13 in the other direction, that makes it 65. So we could go 52 by 65 with 16, about 20 blocks. And that's doable and should be pretty quick to make. So let me figure out just how we're going to do the strips on this, and I'm going to show you. We're probably just going to do a block or two today. This isn't going to be the whole quilt. There's obviously a lot that's going to be involved, but I just wanted you to see this fabric and sort of see the process of how I want to incorporate it into the pattern that I've decided on, and I think it'll be great fun. And it'll be a good way to look at how to do a log cabin block, especially when you're not using equal strips. So this would also be great for a scrap quilt where you're using unequal size strips in your block. Essentially, you want to end up with a square block. That's what you need to put your quilt together. And if for some reason your block comes up a little narrow on one side or the other, you just sew a strip here or there, trim it to size, and you're good to go. So log cabins are very forgiving. They're a very easy quilt to put together, but they also allow for wonderful design opportunity. So I want to make the most of this. Let me get started on some fabrics and show you what I'm thinking about doing here. It's starting to come together, and I really like how the colors are working. My dominant colors are going to be the blues. I have a medium blue and a dark blue, and these are going to run through every block. I will have some accents in the pink, turquoise, purple, and then the green with turquoise, but these are orange. So this will stand apart from these turquoise, which I wanted to make sure that they'll be different, but these will fall in different blocks anyway, so that's okay. And then this is the lighter side of the log cabin. The background, I essentially call these low volume because they're white in the back, and I'm going to be using them to recede in the background as opposed to be part of the dominant print. in order to get started, I'm going to cut 20-inch lengths from each of these. And I'll cut both a 2-inch and a 1.5 inch. And I've determined for a total of 20 blocks how many widths I'm going to need. And of the background fabric, because it's the smaller side of the log cabin square, and we haven't really talked about that, but once I have them made, I'll show you how that works, because the dominant color takes more fabric because it covers more of the block. And I'll show you how that works, because that's really important when you're planning your square and where your first colors are set in order to get your best coverage. So with this, I have 6 different colors. I'm going to need a total of 18 different widths, the 20-inch widths from each of these fat quarters to do that many blocks. So what I'll probably do is cut 2 at the 2-inch and 1 at the 1.5 inch, because the 1.5 inch I'm only going to use once in each block, whereas the 2-inch will be on the twice in each block. And I know I'm using the 1.5 and 2-inch interchangeably with the 2-inch and 2.5. So sometimes I'm talking finished, sometimes I'm talking cut. So keep in mind that these strips in the log cabin are going to finish at either 1.5 inch or 2 inches, which means they're going to be cut along the 20-inch length of your fat quarter at either 2 inches or 2.5 inches. Okay, there we go. It's a lot to say, a lot of numbers, but we've got it. So we know how we're going to do this. These accent colors will only well, they'll occur twice in each block, I think. Well, and it's going to depend on how it goes. So I'm going to cut plenty of fabric so I can go ahead and make my decision as I'm sewing. I don't want to pre-plan this too much, because I really want the colors to flow and be mixed and really create some fun color waves throughout the quilt, because there is so much going on here. There's some great opportunity for some mixing of colors, and that's where I want to go. So I'll start by cutting these, and then I'll get these cut. I'll give you a rundown of how that works. Then I'm going to sew my strips together. A lot of times when we make a log cabin, we can cut them specifically to size. I'm not doing that here. Because I'm using my width of the fat quarter, I'm going to string them all together. And if I get to the end of a spot where I'm going to need extra, I'm just going to run into whatever fabric is next on that seam, which is why I colored these in a way that they're going to meld together pretty well. So if this and this or this and this comes together, they're close enough that they're still going to contrast. But I'll show you all that in a few minutes. Let me go ahead and get some cutting done, and I'll be right back. I have some blocks finished, and they are pretty wild and bright and bold. I love them. They're filled with color and pattern. I really like how they're turning out. First thing I want to do, though, is show you how I sewed my strips together. And I just took each of the 20-inch lengths, and this is one of the 2-inch wide versus the 2.5-inch wide, and I sewed them on the angle, on the bias. This is the same way that I put my bindings together, and I just recently did a video on how to bind your quilt, and the whole step-by-step method of how to do this is in there if you've not done it before. I am going to do, the next video will be the finished quilt, and I'm also going to do some sewing demonstrations on these blocks. As I made these, I found a few things that I want to make sure you're aware of in order for the best success. So see just how they work along, and that works fine, and I really like it. So here's a little corner right here. What I want to show you with these blocks, first off, there's 3 rows of each color. So we have our center square, and I did use the same fabric in each one, and it's different than the other fabrics because I think I had an odd number of fabrics. I don't remember all the details, but anyways, there was one that I set aside for the center. And from the center out, 1, 2, 3, see how there's 3 rows all the way out. And that's one way to make sure that you're on track, because when you're doing a log cabin, it can get a little confusing which way is which unless you string them all together and chain stitch them. And that's what I'm going to recommend. These I sort of did a couple at a time because I was using different colors. And I wanted to be able to show those variances to you. And so I bit the bullet. I did it the hard way, but it taught me some good things about how to find an easier way. So we're going to cover that in the next video. In the meantime, I just want to show you these blocks. I think they're such fun. And as I said, I basically have 3 colorways. This is sort of the pinky purple. It's blue with pinky purple. Then we have blue with greens. And notice that each one has a narrow on the background as well as the color. And in here, the narrow's on the outside. And actually, this is on the outside as well. And see how this little corner fits in right there? If I had just been using straight pieces cut end to end and just pulling them out of a pile, I would have to stop and sew it and make sure it fits. But by having a continuous string of the strips that I need already sewn, it works great. And again, that diagonal is perfect. We want these 90-degree squares because that's what helps create this log cabin pattern. But we don't necessarily want strips along here. You can if that's what you want, but look at this. I didn't even notice that to point it out to you. If you like that method and like the block method, that's wonderful. I just like the way these blend together better, and it's an old technique for me, and so that's what I'm accustomed to. And look at this one. Wow, this is a bright one. And again, 3. So here's our narrow here, and here's our narrow here, and then right here we've got narrows to the inside. And everything else is the darker, or excuse me, the wider colors. And that works out really well. So I'm very happy with these. Let me give you some, oh, that's right. Then there's this one. Do you notice something a little off here? Notice how we have 1, 2, 3. Wait a minute. What happened here? This guy was supposed to go over here. So I need to tear this out, put it on that side, and then add the other strip. So like I said, you really need to keep track of where you are in all this. And for me, it's about starting from the center. It's like, okay, I have 1, 2 rows, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That tells me I'm ready to start on the 3rd row, but I'm going to not be starting it, on this wrong side. So that's where we are. I'll go ahead and get this fixed. I want to see if I can lay some of these out just to show you how fun they look. One of the ideas I'm thinking about is putting these together. Let's see, how far can I go and still keep you on the camera? Like this, and we'll put this one. Oh, I kind of like this one. Let's see, keep all these darker ones towards the center. Like this. I really like how this works. I think these colors are great together. And of course we can do the same thing. Let's see, if we want to do it in a rail pattern. So if we go like this, now this is going to be really hard to do on camera. And let's see, this one will go this way. And you see how we kind of have a diagonal going this way. And then we'll put this here in the middle, and we'll have a bit of a diagonal on the white side as well. So let's see. Yeah, we can kind of see that. So I'm going to show you some different options in the next video. This was primarily figuring out the layout of the block, how best to put it together, what the colors are going to work, because this is something, I mean, I haven't done a log cabin in like 20 years, not a traditional log cabin. So I needed to freshen up my skills and put a new take on it. I like the bit of an asymmetrical look within the what do we call them, the logs, and I think it's wonderful. And despite a little bit of a glitch, that's an easy fix. I just have to tear it out. And there we go. So these are great fun. And I love the fabrics. If you're interested in these fabrics, I don't know if you can still get Fat Quarter bundles, but there are fabrics both online at the Fat Quarter shop and Etsy. And I can put those links down below if you're interested. So there we have it. We have blocks, and we're going to have a quilt before you know it. So I'll see you in a few days with the rest of the blocks. I have 6 of my 20 made, and well, let's say 5 3/4 of my 20 made, and then we're going to have a beautiful, bright, and vibrant quilt. Can't wait to see it. So glad you've been here. Thanks a lot for following along. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.